check.
People think I'm riding high, but I feel so low. I try to be a good man. Life keeps beating me down.
Check 1 and 2.
Try to be a good man. Life keeps beating me down. I never understood that you gotta learn to swim. You're gonna drown. People think I'm riding high, but I feel so low. I try to be a good man. Life keeps beating me down.
Welcome to the Stadium Pulse, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tegan Randolph, your host, the most. College football is year-round around here, so if this is your first time watching the show, I can guarantee you're going to have college football content every single day. We have been working so hard here at Crutchman Media, I'll be completely honest, and what a weekend. What a weekend of college football that we have been blessed, to say the least, to be able to witness. I mean, we're talking 11 o'clock slate to the 3:30 clock. Then we go to the 7:30 slot, and it is just banger after banger after banger and after banger. And I'll be honest, we got a lot to talk about. I don't know if we're going to be able to recap everything within the time frame that we usually have the show running, about 30 minutes, Tuesday, Thursday, and Sunday. Check out the Tuesdays and Thursday show. I'm going to have to get a little creative just because there's so many things that happened this week. I guess we just got started in order, right? So we're going to talk Clemson, Georgia Tech. We're going to talk a little bit of Georgia, Tennessee. Of course, it's in the title. I think it's game of the year. We'll talk a little bit more. We'll talk A&M, Notre Dame. We even got some coaches. Coaches have been fired, folks. That's crazy to think about. Coaching. We'll talk about it. We'll get to it. Sorry, everyone. Just getting a little bit adjusted. Let's get into today's show. Clemson, Georgia Tech. What a game. Is it over for Clemson? Is Clemson this year's Florida State? That's what people are asking. I'm not saying it because I would argue almost Kansas State fits that mold a little bit more, but people are talking about it. You know, Clemson arguably has a first-round pick or a first-round talent on every level of their defense, a veteran quarterback who a lot of people were talking about as a potential first-round pick in of itself, one of the most underrated wide receiver rooms in the country, what we projected to be a great offensive line, continuity with the quarterback and the offensive coordinator. You have Dabo Swinney, a national championship winning head coach. You bring in, I believe it was Tom Allen from Penn State, who just led an incredibly effective defense at Penn State. And you're looking around and you're saying we're 1-2. In our one win against Troy, they were up 17-0 on us for a minute. And we had to crawl our way back at home. And you can talk about the weather delay all you want. But Clemson, what are we doing here? Truthfully, what are we doing here? I mean, this is wild. People are comparing you to Texas A&M. People are comparing you to Miami. Teams that have all this talent but can't execute on Saturdays, and it's a complete disappointment. And here's the difference between Clemson and those teams. I don't project Clemson to have a national championship level roster year in and year out, because that's not how they build their program. Different to what we consider a traditional college football program, where yes, they will use the high school recruiting. Yes, they'll lean into the transfer portal. There'll be a balance. It's about 98% high school recruiting. And, Dabo does a great job with that. It's like 2% transfer portal. And it just recently got to 2%. Their best defensive player statistically, Will Helt, was a Purdue transfer. And he's been one of their best players. And that's what I've been banging the drum of for years at this point, that Clemson, if they want to elevate this roster to go back to the levels of what we saw them in the 2010s, they would have to dip into the transfer portal, or Dabo Swinney would be phased out of the world of college football. I don't mean to get fixated on Clemson because they're the team that lost. Georgia Tech. I'm glad I bet the 7.5 wins, because 7.5 wins was criminal. Go look at their record now and go look at the rest of their schedule and try to tell me, how were they set at 7.5 wins? There's something about a team that has an identity that I just fall in love with every single time. We talked about it with Texas, and we've been seeing Texas phase out of an identity that is not there, and they continue to struggle on the offensive side of the ball. Georgia Tech knows they're not going to be throwing for 400 passing yards every game. They know that they're not going to be a team that's overly dynamic that can beat you in a multitude of ways, but what they can do is execute. They can execute better than you. I understand that's a lot of coach speak to some people, and a lot of times whenever they hear a coach say, we just have to execute better, they kind of roll their eyes and just say, well, maybe you're just not that good. But I can promise you that Brent Key and this Georgia Tech team knows how to execute better than you. They're not hiding from it. You know exactly what they're going to do. They're going to run the ball 19 plus times with Haynes King. They're going to be able to run counter. They're going to run any kind of run concept on the face of the planet, and they're going to run it better than you. And there's nothing you really can do about it. They were at home. They looked fantastic. And if you're Clemson, and honestly, if I were to tell you, if you're watching this and you were to say, I didn't watch the game, maybe I just woke up from a coma, like I don't know what happened. And I told you, Clemson, yeah, they lost the turnover battle, but they were to outrush Georgia Tech. And your prior knowledge was everything that we knew about Georgia Tech and Clemson, but you just missed the game. And you'd be telling me, well, if they outrushed Georgia Tech, Clemson, a team that struggled to run the ball for the first 2 weeks, Adam Randall has been slightly disappointing. They outrushed Georgia Tech. Their MO is running the ball. They should win that football game. And I'm here to tell you that a 55-yard game winner is the difference. Running down the clock with no timeouts, get on the field and hit a 55-yard game winner. Bravo. Just if you do not play football any part of your life, I need you to understand. Truly take the time to go look up how difficult it is to just do a field goal. Minuscules of seconds could make the difference between a successful and a botched kick, and have to do it with running clock. I mean, we saw what happened with, I believe it was Harrison Butker with the Chiefs. That was impressive. To do it for a game winner is remarkable. We have to talk about Cade Klubnik a little bit. This tanked his stock. I was not that high on Cade as an NFL draft prospect for a couple of reasons. A, doesn't have that top-end arm talent that you're truly looking for in a quarterback. He has a little bit of mobility. He reminded me a lot of a Bo Nix, Kenny Pickett type, a guy that could probably function with a good offensive mind, but not someone that's going to elevate the pieces around him. I thought he could elevate at Clemson because we know the difference between college and the NFL. But I also thought that the accuracy could be a little wonky. There's a lot of times that if it's not an RPO, if it's not a one read where I have to just look here and get the ball out, the accuracy drops off a little bit. And a lot of people held on to what he did against Texas, and rightfully so. I mean, that's part of the reason why I held some hope around that, and I held some stock. But Garrett Riley and Cade, you just watch him, and the confidence is not there. It's not there. And when you don't have that confidence and you're looking at the rest of your ACC schedule, I mean, this was my number one team going into this year. And yes, I am dead wrong about that. You can clown me all you want about that. I completely understand. I put these rankings out. I know I'm not going to hit 100%. But to fall off this bad, knowing the talent that's on this roster, I could argue that they're this year's Florida State. Because Kansas State, yes, was projected to go win the Big 12, and we could talk about Kansas State. They'll probably be talked about on the Tuesday show. But knowing the expectations, especially Florida State last year when they were a top 10 team, we can't play the hindsight game. There was hope with DJU. There was hope that they could be a team that is continuously at the top of the mountain, went undefeated, got screwed out of a college football playoff spot. We can't play the hindsight game that people projected that they were going to be bad. They were a top 10 team for a reason. There was hype with Florida State. There was hype with Clemson. And it is faded away because now that's a conference loss. And that is a brutal one. I'd be shocked if Haynes King is not in the ACC title game. So much respect for Haynes King. The end of that game, if you watched it, was straight out of a movie. Picture perfect movie. I have so much respect for Georgia Tech. How can you hate Georgia Tech? They know exactly what they are, and they're going to out-execute you. And there's nothing you can do about it. Let's talk a little bit of Georgia Tech, or Georgia and Tennessee, all the Georgia teams. This was game of the year. Georgia, Tennessee was game of the year. If I were to ask you, hey, both of these teams are going to score over 40, it's going to be a shootout, I guarantee you, you are telling me Tennessee won this football game. I was so impressed by both of these quarterbacks. Joey Aguilar, of course, had some interceptions, but let's talk about Gunnar Stockton, a guy that a lot of people wrote off as maybe a guy that can throw 200 passing yards here and there. He's going to have to run the ball. He's just going to be a game manager, and that is it. But this is a guy that is just a straight up gamer. And if you don't know what I'm talking about when I use that terminology, I'm sorry, just watch the game and you'll understand. There's no real definition. That guy's just a gamer. He's just going to go make plays. It doesn't matter if they're down 50. It doesn't matter if they're up 10. He's just going to go out there and make plays. And Gunnar Stockton kept making plays. Tennessee comes out firing on all cylinders here. I mean, I thought I was watching a masterclass. And honestly, you know, Bobo, the OC for Georgia, gets a lot of flack. I thought he called a fantastic game. Josh Heupel and their offense. I thought I was watching a masterclass from both offensive coordinators or play callers. It felt like it was always one step ahead of the defense. It always felt like every adjustment that Georgia made, especially early into this game, this Tennessee offense knew exactly when to counter it. Okay, you're going to go to a too high shell. Yeah, we're going to throw things underneath, and you're not going to have enough bodies to cover it. It felt like they were in a perfect flow state. Joey Aguilar was just on time, and it looked like Tennessee was going to blow out Georgia at home because Heupel is a damn wizard. You should not be able to do that on a Kirby Smart defense, and he was doing it. But the difference is Georgia is a team that will not go away. It's in their DNA. This is a program that is wired to not go away in these games, to roll over. We saw it against Alabama. When Alabama punched them in the mouth, Georgia didn't stay away. They ended up taking the lead in that game. Obviously, the Ryan Williams catch, yada, yada, yada. We know that story. That book is closed for 2024. But in 2025, that DNA didn't just disappear. You get Gunnar Stockton, someone that this Georgia team has rallied around. I think going 5 for 5 in the red zone was massive. Taking those opportunities when they did get into those spots, especially when we start talking about the overtime. What looked like a glitch on the Real app, which we're not sponsored, by the way, but Real, pretty damn good app. 50 minutes and 38 seconds of time in possession for Georgia. I mean, we're talking Tennessee's getting explosive after explosive after explosive. They had the ghost of Jalen Hyatt be a part of this football game. And they still did not win. Because Georgia was able to get almost 200 yards rushing and control the clock and be the more physical team. It was one of those things. This was kind of the script that I saw for the Notre Dame Texas A&M game. Not in the exact same sense, but the more that I thought Notre Dame was going to be able to pull off more quality drives, those 7, 8, 9, 10 yard or play drives. and the explosives would keep them in the game, but it's not something you can rely on. And Georgia, what was it? A 43-yard field goal away from losing to Tennessee for the first time since 2016. I did not want to mention the kid's name, the kicker. You just have to have that. I like, it's one of those things where it's like you just need to make that kick, because if you miss it, you open the door for Georgia. You let that door open, and you know what Kirby Smart's going to do. I mentioned the 200 yards rushing. They're going to grind out the rock, and they're going to go get a touchdown, and they're going to win that game. And one of the big questions we talked about on the show was, can Georgia run the football? And I think they emphatically can. This is a Georgia team that is going to find a way to win football games. We saw it against Texas last year. They almost did it against Alabama, and they did it against Tennessee. Talking about soul crushing. Now, I honestly, the biggest takeaway that I have from this game is these are two playoff teams. I think I can comfortably say that I was wrong about not Georgia, but Tennessee, because I was still a little bit higher on Georgia. People were a little bit lower because I trusted Kirby Smart could fix the things that were problems in 2024. But I got to give Josh Heupel credit. I got to give Joey Aguilar credit. I got to give like Mike Matthews, everyone on this offense credit, because they have just clicked in a timeline that I did not expect them to be able to click in the fashion that they did. So as much as it's a crushing loss, if you scope the rest of the season, Tennessee, I think, is in a fantastic spot to still make a college football playoff run. I would also like to say Zachariah Branch, that screen pass, NFL draft stock, it's going up. If he could be Arian Smith that can catch a football, maybe run a couple routes here and there. Arian Smith could run a couple routes. I watched him play at the Shrine Bowl, but he couldn't catch a lick. If Zachariah Branch can do that, dude's going to be a problem. Like I said, this is the Stadium Pulse, ladies and gentlemen. I apologize. There was no Thursday show. Technical difficulties, unfortunately, with the microphone. Had to scrap the episode. I thought it was going to be a very good episode, and I do apologize. I want to try to see if I can squeeze in an extra one this week, just because we have so much to talk about. Week 4, as if I get a break, right? The Week 4 slate is incredibly stacked with, I think, underrated games that you're not going to really be thinking about that I want you to know. So I implore you, stay for the Tuesday show. Check out the channel in general. We do college football content. That's all we do around here. If you're an NBA guy, NFL guy, boxing guy, we have channels ready for that. Just click on the channels tab on the Stadium Pulse, and I promise you can find exactly what you're looking for. Kretschmann Media is working so hard to be the best provider of content for you, because we're trying to change up the game here. And so if you see this, leave a like, comment, anything across the board means the world to me. We got to talk about my team, though, because if this is the first time you've seen me, I will be unbiased about damn near every single team on the face of the planet, regardless of the sport, except for this team. Texas A&M does not win these football games. They do not win these types of football games. Texas A&M beats Notre Dame in their house. Let's talk about it. 2014 was the last time Texas A&M won a road-ranked game, just of any kind. 1978 was the last time they were able to win a road top 10 game. Texas A&M does not win these types of football games. I was sitting on the couch to the right of me. My right, your left. And I was pacing in my living room saying, I've seen this story before. They're going to drive down and they're going to get stopped. And we get to that 4th and goal. I could not believe my eyes. So let's talk about this game overall. Because Notre Dame right now is 0-2. They're still ranked, to some people's surprise, which, hot take, I'm not surprised that they're ranked. They lost to Miami in a close game, and they lost to Texas A&M in a 1-point game that was due to a botched PAT. This is still one of the best teams in the country, in my eyes, regardless of what the record says. And they more than likely will still make the college football playoff if they go and win 10 games, or they have to win out, basically, because they don't get a conference championship. Key things to note: 9 of 9 in the red zone from both teams. Not 9 each, but in totality. If you got into the red zone this game, you were scoring. And if I were to tell you it was a shootout, well, I would have said I told you so, because if you go watch the show, I said the over, I think, hits. This is going to be a completely different game than what we saw from last year in Kyle Field. Texas A&M has a better quarterback. They have more explosive wide receivers. It is a different type of skill set on both sides of the ball to provide potentially a high-scoring game, which we saw. I was shocked to watch A&M get punched in the mouth. I mean, first drive, botched punt, touchdown, Notre Dame goes up 7. I thought at that point it was over. They were walking into a hornet's nest. Notre Dame was on fire. But Texas A&M gets an 85-yard touchdown from Mario Craver. And also, let's just take a moment. Mario Craver, 200 receiving yards. Texas A&M has not had a 1,000-yard wide receiver since 2016. They are well on pace to potentially have 2. Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver have changed this offense. Changed the offense. We can talk about Le'Veon Moss, the running backs. Everyone, including myself, talked about how they could be one of the best rushing attacks in the country. Not just the SEC, the country. And they look like one of the most explosive passing offenses in the entire country. That's because of Mario Craver, who I think is the most underrated transfer pickup of the entire college football season. Is that not fair to say? Because he wasn't highly touted. He was seen as a fast, deep threat wide receiver who had a solid freshman year at Mississippi State. And now he is lighting the college football world on fire. Don't let Casey Concepcion's production get lost as well, because he played fantastic. And I'll be honest here. Marcel Reed, 4 for 11 on third down. He was 17 of 37. The biggest takeaway, if you're a Texas A&M fan here, is obviously enjoy the win, because this is the first real step the program has felt, honestly, since the Jimbo Fisher 2020 season. This feels like a real step forward. I'm not going to make any takes of they're a lock for the college football playoff. They're SEC title contenders. There's still a long road ahead, but it does feel like a strong step forward. But the biggest takeaway is you did not play a perfect game. Far from it. 17 of 37 passing. There was problems across the defense. It felt like once they shifted away from man coverage, CJ Carr played really well when it was zone, finding the soft spots. I got to give CJ Carr credit. When they did need him to dissect a defense, especially in zone, when you really have to have veteran eyes, this is still a redshirt freshman that we're talking about. He was able to layer the football at a very high level. We're talking about, I think it was Malachi Fields started to rise up as potentially his number one target. Carr was dealing. I thought CJ Carr was really dissecting the defense at a high level when it wasn't man coverage. I do wonder with Texas A&M coming up. They're going into a bye week, which, by the way, if you watch that game, you know the injuries. Marcel was hurt. Le'Veon Moss, I believe, was throwing up on the sidelines. There was injuries to Scooby Williams. There was a scary injury to Bryce Anderson, praying that he's okay. He posted on his Instagram story, if you did not see, he was the one that ended up having the neck injury. They took off his pads, face mask, helmet, everything. Had to get stretchered off into an ambulance. He posted that he was all right. Prayers for him. Hate to see those injuries. Makes me sick to my stomach every time. And I got to say, I saw a TikTok where someone said Notre Dame was dominating on the run. I disagree. When it wasn't Jadarian Price on the field, they were locked in on Jeremiah Love, and then you had the touchdown at the very end. But I think for what the Notre Dame offense provides, Texas A&M did a fair enough job and didn't allow for like a 200, 300-yard rushing attack. Holding them to what was it, 150, 127? I would take that every single time. Let's talk about the botched play calls or botched flags and then the botched PAT. Tyler Buckner, man, I feel for him. I could not have guessed in a million years he was going to be the one that opens the door for Texas A&M to go win that football game. And you could see it in his eyes. He could already see that it was going to be on his shoulders if they were to lose that football game. You have a kick return take back because of a holding, which honestly was an egregious holding call that didn't even have to happen. Even if you took, Ostrom away from that play, it wasn't going to impact it. So if you believe it's a holding, Theo didn't even have to make the play there. So that's on him. And Marcel Reed continuously gave them opportunities to win that game. The dude went 17 for 37 and honestly wasn't overly impactful running the football, but he just kept them in this game time and time again. 4th and goal, left sideline, in the little pocket to a tight end that had not catched the ball all day. Texas A&M does not do this. I have to remind people, they do not do this. It was over 10 years for me to see them go win a ranked road game. And they did it. So we'll talk about Texas A&M in some of the future shows. They go into a bye week, get healthy. Notre Dame, they have to run the table. Like, I understand a lot of people are going down a bunch of different paths of what Notre Dame could potentially look like to get into the college football playoff. Frankly, they have to win out and let the cards fall down. They do not control their destiny. They just don't. 11-1, they're always going to be a lock for the college football playoff because they don't have a conference championship, and 11-1 is going to be a good enough resume knowing their rivalries and who Notre Dame is. But 10-2 leaves the door open to potentially getting pushed out with how good the ACC looks. The SEC, the Big Ten, the Big 12 is probably going to just get one. We'll talk about that Utah-Texas Tech game coming up on Tuesday. That game's going to be good. A&M Notre Dame. It's hard to have more takeaways because I could talk about them for 30 minutes, but I have to give so much respect to Mario Craver in those wide receivers because Marcel did not play a great game. There was a 95-yard touchdown miss. There's a shot down to Amari Niblack. That could have been a 40-plus yard play. There's a lot of things to clean up from Texas A&M, and that's what you can be hopeful for, but also cautious of for the rest of the season. Because if you can improve, and that's not the best version of Texas A&M, as an A&M fan, you got to be excited. But if that's what you are, and that's the best you played, you're going to lose to Auburn. You're going to potentially lose to LSU, Texas. There's a lot of spots. Missouri, there is a lot of dangerous spots. Even Arkansas on the road with Taylor Green in that offense. There's a lot of dangerous spots on that schedule. So don't get too high. Go into the bye week, get rested up, but understand there's a long path to go to still getting better. Let's talk about coaches that got fired. 2 coaches got fired today. Virginia Tech head coach Brent Pry is no longer the head coach at Virginia Tech, and Deshaun Foster is no longer the head coach at UCLA. Now, the interesting part about this is the fact that the transfer portal now opens up tomorrow for both of these teams, and they have not played 4 games, so the red shirts are still available. Now, you could say that Virginia Tech's not a good program. They don't have anything worth anything. And you could say the same for UCLA. Now, how funny would it be if Nico Imalava left? Nico Imaliva. I'm a butcher his last name, but honestly, he hasn't played well enough for me to say his name correctly. UCLA, I feel so bad for Deshaun Foster. Frankly, I knew it right when he got hired. There's takes out there that I have said that he is just going to be in a losing position because UCLA, as soon as we got to this NIL era and post Chip Kelly, has not been able to figure it out. They just haven't. They cannot get the NIL right. They cannot get the modern football infrastructure right. USC is shoving them into a locker. UCLA just feels like a team that goes to the Big Ten for the big money, but they weren't prepared for it. And then Brent Pry for Virginia Tech. You just saw the writing on the wall. Getting blown out by Old Dominion. You really did feel like the first 2 weeks were your big audition to give hope to the rest of the Virginia Tech faithful, a program that I will die on this hill. I want to see back so bad. And I'm not a Virginia Tech fan. And this was a program with pride. It's the lunch pail program, man. This is a tough football team. And it looks like the shell of themselves. You had a huge opportunity against South Carolina. You were in that game for 3 quarters. You get a lead quick on Vanderbilt, a very good football team. You lose that lead. Then you get smacked around Old Dominion. You have to fire the guy at that point. Could be a John Gruden candidate. Honestly, it could be a team that gets John Gruden. I'm more curious about the transfer window because honestly, whatever they do for the rest of the season, it's not going to matter. They have to go get their new head coaches. We'll react when the coaches get there. I wanted to talk about this just solely for the transfer window because there's a lot of guys that I think are talented on this roster. Sometimes it's just poor coaching. And I wonder who's going to hop in. And I guarantee you we're going to get at least one impact player from one of these 2 teams that could be impacting. I don't think they could play this year, obviously, but I think in future seasons, they could be extremely impactful. The red shirt piece is very important, knowing that this is before they've played 4 games. But I'm very interested to see where Virginia Tech goes. Do they go back to their more physical roots, and can UCLA figure it out? That's the Stadium Pulse, folks. There's a lot of games to review. And so I think what's fair for you guys is on the Tuesday show, I just stack rank a bunch of games and we just quickly get through them. I'm talking Ole Miss, Arkansas, Florida, and LSU. I think there's some other games I'm just completely drawing a blank on. The night slate was just a pain just because if you guys don't know, I make TikToks as well. And I can only review so many things that, oh yeah, Vanderbilt, South Carolina as well. There's only so many games I can review in some time. So we'll get through those. We also have to dive into week 4. We'll do a Heisman ranking. We'll do top 10s. But with that being in mind, thank you guys so much for watching the Stadium Pulse. I appreciate everyone that has watched the show. Our sub count keeps going up, which just tells me I'm slowly but surely doing the right things. And I trust that this show is going to be big one time. And so I'm just going to stay consistent across the board. So thank you guys so much for watching the Stadium Pulse. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And I'll see you guys Tuesday at 5:30. Yeah, Tuesday at 5:30, Thursday at 5:30, and then Sunday next week we'll review week 4 at the same time right now. See you.